Hello there, this is Dana Arcuri, author, speaker, survivor, advocate, and certified trauma recovery coach from danaarcuri.com. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone is doing very well today. Today's topic is going to be about family estrangement. We're zooming in now on something really important that I feel is really credible educational information, especially to support those who are men and women, adult children, who are estranged from at least one or more family members. And so the topic today is what not to say to adult children who are estranged from their birth family. And before I get into the 10 things of what not to say, I wanted to share an exciting announcement. So I am having, in the month of July 2022, 4 Zoom online classes specifically about family estrangement, the trauma recovery process. And it is going to be a very safe community, a very compassionate community of survivors to gain more information, education, emotional support, and learn and gain some new understanding about everything that goes into family estrangement and beyond. The one thing I have to say is that you are not alone. So a lot of times we might feel alone. It could be isolating. There is a stigma on family estrangement, especially for the adult children who may have estranged from their parents, siblings, or other relatives. And so we'll go into that on my Zoom classes. But I wanted to announce that from right now till June 14th, is ideal to sign up for the early bird special for this class. So these classes are 1 hour live classes on Zoom starting in July, and it will work its way through the first Monday of August 2022. If you want the discounted rate, sign up during the early bird special. Now let's get to today's topic on what not to say to adult children who are estranged from their birth family. And so we must understand that this is a sensitive topic and that people could be estranged from various people within their family of origin. The one thing is it's important to build awareness and to educate on some basic information as well as even some facts. Let's start with what is family estrangement. So according to Psychology Today, they say family estrangements occur when at least one family member begins distancing themselves from another family member because of long-standing negativity in the relationship. So one fact about family estrangement is that it's not accidental. And so what this means is that nobody just accidentally goes no contact with their birth family. Instead, this is something that's very well thought out. Some people can take many years or even decades before they make that major decision that will change the rest of their life. And nobody takes it lightly. So we have to understand that this is a serious situation and it is rooted to family abuse. So when I did the research on the statistics and on all the credible evidence surrounding the topic of family estrangement, the number one reason why people are estranged from one or more family members is due to various types of abuse. It could be domestic violence, it could be sexual abuse, it could be physical abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, and on it goes. Next is that there are things that people say that can be harmful, inappropriate, and just outright cruel. And so today I'm going to share on 10 things that you should not say to adult children who are estranged from one or more family members. Let's start with number 1. And so I'm going to state what the person may say and then give my feedback on it. So someone might say, nobody is perfect, so you should just give them some slack. Interesting. The statement actually minimizes and invalidates the adult child's experience of suffering horrific abuse by one or more family members. Next, we should understand that people don't just cut their families out of their lives for a petty grievance or for minor missteps. Instead, this goes well beyond being perfect. This goes well beyond like sibling rivalry. This goes well beyond just little tiny things that might happen within the family unit. Abuse runs deep, and typically it is repetitive, and it goes in a vicious cycle from one generation to the next generation. Number two, someone might say, you turned out fine, so it couldn't have been that bad. While someone may think this was a compliment, that's actually the furthest from the truth. Stating that a survivor turned out fine and that it couldn't be so bad, meaning that the abuse couldn't be so bad. Again, this is invalidation of the traumatic, horrifying abuse that these people have been through, especially in their childhood, teen years, and it can even literally go through into their adult life. Next is that when an abuse survivor turns out fine, only they shall get the credit. And the reason why is because for someone to turn out so well after being traumatized, abused, possibly diagnosed with complex PTSD, compounded trauma, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, and on it goes. There's so many different diagnoses that are linked to trauma. And so if someone turns out fine, it's because they did so much work. They did the grief work. They did the trauma recovery work, and they deserve to get the credit. Number three is someone might say, look at all they did for you. They gave you clothing and food and shelter. That remark is actually irrelevant. That has nothing to do with anything. When we really look at what does a parent legally have to do for their children? By law, they have to give their children food and clothing and water and shelter, etc., etc. I need to stop for a second and mention that there are some people who are probably watching this video right now and they know that their parents didn't do the best they can. Maybe they didn't have food. Maybe they didn't have shelter. Maybe their parents didn't take them to the doctors when they were ill. Maybe they were neglected and abused so horrifically that they were lacking in the basic essentials that are part of a parent's responsibility. And if that is your situation, I am so sorry for what you've been through, and I validate it. Next is number four. Some people might say to the adult children who are estranged from one or more family members, they'll say, explain what they did that was so bad. Explain what was so wrong. And while I can understand why someone might be interested in this, and I think, it probably does interest people who haven't had toxic, abusive families. Because they're out of the loop and inexperienced, they're coming from a place of the lack of knowledge. It might even be the lack of education about abuse, about trauma, about sibling abuse, about narcissistic abuse, and on and on. So, I can understand why someone might be interested in having the abuse survivor explain, but there's really important facts we need to nail down right now. No one should have to explain themselves to anyone about this personal situation, especially if they are a stranger or an acquaintance and you really don't know them and they really don't know you. So prying into someone's life and asking them to explain themselves about why they were abused or why they went no contact or why they cut one or more family members out of their life, it's really inappropriate. It is not something that most trauma survivors want to discuss, especially with a stranger. And it's something that is very confidential. So please respect other people's boundaries. That's really important here. Next is number 5. Someone might say, I could never cut out my parents or my siblings from my life. And while that very well could be true, that there are definitely people in our world who would never go no contact or become estranged from their parents or grandparents or their cousins or their siblings or other relatives, that's actually beside the point. That has nothing to do with anything to do with us adult children who are currently estranged from one or more family members. And so, number one, that statement, I would never cut out my family from my life, that's hurtful and it's insensitive. Cutting your family out of your life is not an easy thing to do. The remark when someone says, well, I would never cut out my family from my life, that statement seems like it was such a light decision, an easy decision, maybe even an impulsive decision, which it wasn't. When someone went no contact and has become estranged from one or more family members, it was very well thought out. This was not spontaneous nor impulsive. The one thing that really needs to be stated is this. If you learn nothing else from today's video, here it is, people. Nobody just walks away from a gentle, nurturing, loving, safe, kind, warm, caring, respectful family of origin. Rather, after exhausting all other options, estrangement from one or more family members was their last resort. Please avoid comparing other people's families to your family. And please give grace, compassion, and empathy to those men and women who are now adults who felt that the only option was to cut all ties because their family was so abusive and malicious towards them. Number 6 is someone might say, you can't cut them out because it was your mother. Or they might say, it was your brother, it was your father, it was your sister, it was your birth family. So a lot of times I have heard this. People will say, you can't cut ties because it's your mother. And on and on and on. You know, if I would receive $1 for every time someone commented on my YouTube channel or someone said this to me, I would be a millionaire by now. Cha-ching. Next is that whether someone is estranged from one or more family members, avoid that type of phrase, the phrase that says you can't cut them out because it's your mother, it's your brother, it's your sister, etc., etc. Please don't use that phrase. It's really not helpful. It's not beneficial. It's not compassionate. And it really goes to show that you lack compassion and knowledge about family estrangement. Next is that being a parent or a relative doesn't give someone a free pass to manipulate, to gaslight, ostracize, judge, condemn, or abuse another family member. The toxic family enmeshment and dynamics do run quite deeply, and that is called intergenerational trauma. So intergenerational trauma is when through each generation there is ongoing abuse from one or more people in that family and that lineage. And so what happens is intergenerational trauma goes on and on and on. It's a vicious cycle that goes in a circle until one person finally has the courage to say no more. And they end the cycle of abuse. And this is the most empowering thing that you could ever do for your children, grandchildren, and future generations. Let's go to number 7. Someone might say, your parent, sibling, or relative did the best that they could given their own traumatic childhood. And so I've heard a lot of excuses, and this is an excuse. So let's set the record straight. There is no excuse for abuse. So just because someone was already traumatized and abused, and let's just give an example. Let's say it was your grandfather. Your grandfather was abused very, very badly. And he gets married and he starts abusing his wife. And they have children. Let's just say they have 10 kids. and they start violently abusing and neglecting their 10 kids. And then these kids grow up, and then they get married, and then there's trauma within their families, and the abuse continues on. It is just a horrific cycle that most people are not even consciously aware of. Build awareness. Check out your family tree. Check out your lineage. Check it out, because I myself did the hard work of checking out my family tree on all sides of the family. And it was very, very clear that abuse has been going on for generations, for decades, for centuries. And I'm thankful that I broke the cycle of abuse. And I think it was the number one key to my healing journey. Next is, let's get into number 8. Someone might say, stop living in the past and just move on. Another thing they might say is, oh, just get over it. Oh, you're so sensitive. Oh, just get over it. So when someone stops talking to their parents or their siblings or other relatives, it doesn't mean that they live in the past. Actually, it demonstrates that they have already moved forward from their past. So when someone may go no contact or estranged from one or more relatives, they're continuing to rebuild a brand new life. They are making a fresh start, and it's nobody's place to judge. It is nobody's place to judge that. Everyone has the right to move forward at a different pace and in a different manner and for whatever works for them. And if there is violence in that family of origin and habitual patterns of abuse in whatever manner it might be, each person has the right to cut the ties for once and for all, especially if they want to heal their trauma. Now, the one thing we must know is that you cannot heal if you stay in a toxic environment. You cannot heal if you stay in abusive, unhealthy relationships. You cannot. So it's really important to know that your freedom is vital for your healing journey. Next is number 9. You should pray harder and forgive them. Wow, if only that was the ticket. If that was the ticket to the healing journey, we would all be healed. We would all be healed and have happy families. It's not that I don't believe in prayer, because I do believe in prayer. It's not that I don't believe in forgiveness, because there's a place in our life when we choose to go that direction, it could be beneficial to us and be part of our empowerment. However, we need to understand the dynamics involved with what I call religious gaslighting. So this statement, you need to pray harder and you just need to forgive them. Oh, just forgive them. How many times are we going to forgive someone who violently sexually attacked their sibling? How many times is someone going to forgive that mother who beat them and beat them and beat them until they had bruises, scars, and broken bones? How many times are we going to forgive and forgive and forgive? And yet, the abuser doesn't stop abusing. Perhaps we should change the words and say, why won't the abuser stop? And so let's go to a very incredible quote by Autumn Shroud, who says, the concept of forgiveness allows the abuser to still abuse and keeps the victim in a state of victimhood. And so we must understand that estrangement comes after many years of negative family patterns, ongoing conflicts, violence, manipulation, gaslighting, triangulation of relationships, retaliation, smear campaigns, and ongoing dynamics that are toxic and abusive. Number 10, and the last one, you're going to regret this when they die. Interesting. How come you think we're going to regret this? Again, that sounds like someone's judging. That sounds like someone's assuming they know everything about you and your family dynamics, which they don't. So let's start with this. When someone says you're going to regret going no contact with one or more family members, this statement is guilt tripping. It's a classic example of condemnation and guilt tripping another person. It's laced with criticism, harsh judgments, and just outright cruelty. So we must understand that nobody went no contact with their family of origin for no reason at all. And before someone makes that huge decision on family estrangement with whoever it could be in their life that they choose to cut the ties for once and for all, there's a really good chance that they already prayed about it. They already pondered on it. They meditated. They may have been in therapy for decades trying to come up with a solution. And after they have exhausted all options, their last resort was to estrange from one or more family members. So please respect their decision. And next would be that adult children will estrange from their parents, siblings, or entire family unit because their toxic family of origin is unwilling to own up and take responsibility and accountability for their cruel words, actions, and behaviors. And so we must understand the reality is that if someone is confiding in you about their painful truth of going no contact and or estranging from one or more family members, there's actually no need to say anything at all. If you do feel compelled to say something, do not say these 10 statements. No judgment, because it is inappropriate, it is hurtful, it is re-traumatizing. And so we're going to end on this note. Are you estranged from one or more family members? And if so, you could feel free to share who it is. You could feel free to share your story. Due to the sensitive topic, you don't have to feel that it's necessary to go into your whole trauma story. This is really personal, and it's up to each person. Another thing is that you could also share in the comments, how long have you been estranged from this person? In July 2022, it will be my 4-year anniversary of being estranged from my mother and my siblings and relatives. This was not an easy decision. I don't regret it. And it was the ticket for my healing journey. It really opened up the door wide for me to self-reflect, for me to research and do the hard work of grieving and then of healing and then of becoming educated on everything involving the dysfunctional family unit, healing from abuse, and on and on. So I'm keeping it real here. I have absolutely not one single regret except this one. I wish that I would have left sooner. I wish I would have walked away at least 20 to 30 years prior to what I really did. Had I known 20 to 30 years ago what I know now, I guarantee I would have cut the ties much sooner, because it would have meant that at a younger age, I would have been set free from that toxic family enmeshment and the trauma bond. It would have meant that I would have had so many more years to heal. And I think everything happens for a reason, so I'm not going to ponder and dwell on the what ifs or the whys. Instead, I'm going to look within and I'm going to ask myself, what did you learn? What did it teach you? And the one thing it taught me was that my life has value. I am worthy of unconditional love, gentleness, nurturing, care, respect, and kindness, and healthy, happy relationships. And so are you, my friends. So feel free to like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're interested in joining my upcoming family estrangement Zoom classes for July 2022, check out the early bird special on my website. Sign up today to get the discounted price before the price goes up. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, and God bless.